I kind of want to have a little bit of fun today. You know, maybe make some people laugh, anger some other people, collectively laugh because those other people are angry. You know, considering 2025 has been a very interesting year for the Nintendo fandom, and we've seen the brand name of Nintendo get completely swept through the mud over the past, like 7 or 8 months now. And seeing as how everybody and their mother that's become critical of Nintendo and their business practices is officially being labeled as a grifter, I thought it might be fun to kind of steer into this discussion a bit. Think about all of the good times that we've had from April up until now, and all of the names that have become part of the discussion. Some of those names are familiar, some of them are brand new. But all, or at least most of them, have one thing in common, and it's that the Nintendo fandom, specifically the Switch 2 fans, the hardcore corporate defenders, the ones that are apologists for everything that Nintendo does, have referred to all of these individuals, myself included, at one point or another as a grifter. And I thought, you know, since it's the end of the year, the Game of the Year awards are coming up, we can also have a fun little discussion about the grifter of the year. In fairness, the actual definition of a grifter is somebody that tries to sell something that they don't quite believe in. So I don't think we're using the technical term of grifter here. We're gonna define a grifter as anybody that's just a mindless consumer, what they view as a Nintendo grifter. That's what we're gonna use as the definition of a grifter. To kind of shake things up a bit and also not to upset too many people, I was very careful about this list that I had chosen today for the nominations of the Nintendo Grifter of the Year. In order to not upset anybody too much, I tried to pick YouTubers that either I thought they could take a joke, or they're just really large YouTubers and whatever I say is not going to affect them. I also tried to make it so that I chose people that have bought the Switch 2 and that have not bought the Switch 2. Because, you know, there are the grifters that went out there, they hated on Nintendo prior to the launch of the Switch 2, and then they bought it, and then it kind of just became Nintendo Glazers. There are other ones that went and bought the Switch 2 and then just kept hating and doing hate reviews for the Switch 2. And then there are folks who decided that they were not going to be buying a Switch 2 altogether and stuck through with it and have continued to hate on Nintendo. Some of them more than others, obviously. Then again, this is meant to be taken lightheartedly. It's meant for a laugh. Hopefully, I do not upset too many people with this discussion. But yeah, let's have some fun. In order to make this a little bit fair, I will even start with myself. And to really steer into this discussion and double down on the humor, I will speak about myself in the third person, because nothing will anger people that clicked on this video more than hearing me talk about myself in the third person. Thankfully, I have seen a lot of what people have said about me online, because normally they say it right in my comment sections, so I have quite a bit of an idea of what I am to many of these people. And I think it's hilarious, so let's do this. NintenDeen is the hallmark definition of what these people view as a grifter. He's somebody that, in their minds, makes a lot of good points, has a lot of good arguments, but they're just so upset that he's focused specifically on Nintendo. At first, they thought maybe he was being genuine, but then they realized that over time, he was just trying to pay his rent. And they know this because he used to make videos that weren't about Nintendo and they didn't get that many views, so obviously he has to do Nintendo hate videos, otherwise he would no longer be relevant. Now he also has 3 or 4 years of solid videos of retrospectives that many of them like, and it makes them feel torn because on one hand they're like, yo, this is like a genuine Nintendo fan that seems to actually enjoy the games that he talks about. But on the other hand, he's trying to convince people that purchasing a Legion Go was smarter for him than buying a Nintendo Switch 2. He's clearly nothing more than just a Nintendo hater and a grifter. What's worse is that he used to make daily retrospective videos. It was great. You could just jump on his channel and hear him talk about a Mario game for 5 to 10 minutes every single day. But now he's steered into it so much that he has almost 200 solid videos from April until now criticizing almost every single aspect about Nintendo imaginable. He's gotta be one of the most depressed people online because it can't be healthy to talk about something you dislike this much, am I right? But the problem with NintenDeen is that he doesn't really try. He regurgitates a lot of the same talking points. The quality of his videos range from meh to absolutely just garbage of him talking. He barely includes his sources and often does not have any timestamps. The quality of his videos is just not there. But he still makes this nomination because he is consistent as hell, stubborn as hell, persistent as hell. Then if you're looking for quantity over quality, I don't know that anybody else on this list will have provided that. And as such, it is my pleasure to name NintenDeen as the first nominee of the 2025 Nintendo Grifter of the Year. And as NintenDeen, I accept this nomination, and really hope you are enjoying my content. Also, there has been yet another discount for the Nintendo Switch 2 currently, and it's in Australia. We'll see when it hits the United States eventually. Next on this list might be one of the few YouTubers that I was actually fairly familiar with prior to the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2. But I never actually used to watch his main channel, I used to watch him from the podcast that he was on. And that, of course, was the Nintendo podcast. So, the podcast used to feature Wood from Beat 'em Ups and Bob Wolf from the Wolf Den. I wasn't really a fan of either of their main channels, but I really enjoyed their podcast. They had a good dynamic between them. Yeah, two random dudes with long hair, both having very different outlooks on life, it seems. But the differences in their personalities was appealing, if not entertaining. Eventually, Bob did leave the podcast. I kind of stopped watching the podcast at that point, and I only recently started watching Bob's main channel, and that's mainly because I've just recently started getting into the handheld PC world, so some of his videos are a lot more relatable now. Either way, Bob doesn't make this list. But Wood from Beat 'em Ups absolutely makes this list. Look, I got a soft spot for Wood. I think it would actually be really fun to hang out with him. And he seems like the kind of guy where if you're hanging out with him, he'd be really genuine, he'd wear his heart out on his sleeve, you'd never be wondering what he was thinking. But leading up to the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, he was going pretty hard against Nintendo, as many of us were. In his podcast, they had a pretty good discussion on supply chain management and how much parts actually cost for Nintendo because people were assuming how much the Switch 2 costs to make. And somebody in the podcast made an argument that it's like, well, that's the price that you would pay to build this thing, not the price that Nintendo pays. I don't know. All around, there was like some good, thoughtful discussions about it. He was being very critical. I respected how critical he was being because he is an immense Nintendo fan. Now, I don't necessarily fault him for going out and buying a Switch 2. I think most content creators and influencers were going to regardless. So like, I fault that concept altogether, but I knew he was going to get one. My issue is just how ecstatic he was when he grabbed one. He not only bought the console, he went out and bought every single accessory as if this was just like the turn of a page where it's like, okay, we're done with the whole negativity prior to the launch of it. And now that the Switch 2's out and it's broken records, it's time to appeal to everybody that's bought one. And it's actually really funny because I think many people expected that the narrative was just going to die out after the 3.5 million that were sold for the Switch 2. It obviously hasn't. It's spiraled. It's gotten worse. And you could kind of see Wood adjusting as time goes on too, and now he's starting to be a little bit more critical about a lot of things. So, you know, he's a typical influencer kind of making videos about this stuff. I'd say I respect the hustle, but I don't know if he's hustling. Like I said, with Wood, he might actually be genuine. One second, he might be super ecstatic about being a Nintendo fan and having a Nintendo channel. And the next second, he might actually feel deep down he's got issues with a lot of the stuff that Nintendo's putting out. I don't fault him for being critical of Pokemon, for example. It's not like nobody else was. But there is one thing where I do feel like he rightfully got a lot of hate for, and he deserves even more hate for it. Or at least it's not something that should be just ignored. But it's the whole thing he did where he pretended that he was in the know about an upcoming Direct. And he gave all of these people so many different things to talk about, was extremely manipulative with it, and then brushed it off as if he was conducting some kind of social experiment. That, for me, was a bit much, and I think that social experiment is the reason he makes this list, quite frankly. Like, just think about how absurd this whole concept is, and the fact that we've kind of just moved on from it and just accepted it. It's so weird to me. Imagine right now, after the past 8 months of sitting here going on about how critical I am against Nintendo and how much I dislike the Switch 2 and Nintendo's pricing policies, and then all of a sudden I was just like, oh, by the way, guys, and I put the camera on myself and I was holding a Switch 2 in my hand and I was like, hey, I've actually had this thing since launch, and I was just conducting a social experiment to see the effects of being critical against Nintendo to the entirety of the public. If I did that, I would be destroyed, and I would deserve the destruction that I would get. You can't do that. You can't just mess with people's emotions. And I know a lot of people have already discussed it, but that's part of 2025. It's part of the Grifter of the Year discussion. And that's why Wood is the second nomination for the Grifter of the Year. Sorry, Wood, if you're watching, cool dude. I'd love to be on the podcast sometime, but you conducted a social experiment, and as such, part of the social experiment is that you end up on this list. All right, now we're gonna swing the pendulum in the complete opposite direction. This next nominee might be one of the funniest people on YouTube, for me at least. I've mentioned him a few times before. I've showed up on some of his streams and made a few comments. He's definitely not somebody that I align with pretty much anything that he says outside of criticisms of Nintendo, but I do find him hilarious, and that's a big reason why he gets nominated today, and I'm talking about Fratanga of Fratanga Plays. So the reason I chose Fratanga for this is not because I think he intentionally makes fun of Nintendo just for the sake of being disingenuous. Like, he clearly has a distaste for the company and the way it operates and the way it runs. He doesn't even like Nintendo games, and he actually has some very well thought out, researched content in regards to the Palworld lawsuit. But the reason everybody thinks he's a grifter and everybody calls him a grifter is because he goes out of his way to make Nintendo the butt of all jokes. Like, he is proud to be known as a Nintendo hater. Like, even if Nintendo Switch 2 ended up selling 300 million units, he would still go out there and talk about how there are 300 million idiots out there, in his opinion. And I think it makes his hatred of Nintendo very unique, very different than the other people that are on this list. And really most of the content creators online that are critical of Nintendo in general. Yeah, like, most of us do this because we are massive Nintendo fans and we don't like the way Nintendo's going. This guy does it because he thinks it's funny to make Nintendo fans cry. And cry has he made them do. He also made an entire rap called Gotta Sue 'Em All. And honestly, for that alone, he would be making this list. And that's why the third nominee for the Nintendo Grifter of the Year goes to Fratanga of Fratanga Plays. Following Fratanga is actually one of the smaller YouTubers on this list. I think technically I'm the smallest, so he would be the second smallest YouTuber on this list. Okay, so I don't know how best to describe this guy, but imagine you took NintenDeen, and yes, I am referring to myself in the third person again. You took NintenDeen's content. You actually made videos that were properly edited out of it. You know, instead of just having this random dude talk with footage in the background, you actually put in some effort to make a video that would be worth watching instead of just listening to. You shorten the output so that you strictly only discuss the biggest talking points that are going to be getting the most clicks. You have a channel that only started in the past 5 or 6 months, and pretty much every video on this channel has been something critical of Nintendo to an extent. And for added measure, you just sound like you are disappointed in everybody that has ever thought about buying a Nintendo Switch 2. Throw that all together into a bag, shake it up, and bring it out, and what you have here is Lord Frogmire. This guy started after me and surpassed me very quickly. His videos are frequently topping the most hype charts, and he's doing so while just being critical to as much as he can about Nintendo. I actually don't know this guy's deal. I cannot tell if he's genuine or disingenuous. I am pretty sure he's a Nintendo fan. I'm pretty sure he has a Nintendo Switch 2 and he's spoken about it. Either that or he's playing his brother's Nintendo Switch 2. But it seems like the route he takes is to make hate reviews. Either that or he's emulating those games, not sure. Either way, this guy's videos naturally popped up just because obviously when you're in the same circles, your videos tend to spill over onto each other's algorithms. He's growing at a pretty quick rate, and I actually do think it's because of the quality of his videos. He's not just slapping things together and talking in the background. One of the biggest criticisms most people have against him is that he is strictly focused on Nintendo hate, which is kind of a theme here. But another one is his obvious use of AI for his thumbnails, which is also a theme in these discussions. Either way, I think it's really funny to see just how despised he is when I'm scrolling through the internet. Like, Nintendo fans have nothing nice to say about this guy. I think some of them perceived me as the biggest opportunist Nintendo hater out there until Lord Frogmire came about. And for that reason, plus the quality of his output, he is the next nominee on the list of the Nintendo Grifters of the Year. Next up is a content creator that has been critical of the industry for quite a while. Again, this is somebody that I had no idea that their channel even existed until I started making these videos and the algorithm started sending them my way. And while he has actually kind of slowed down a bit and shifted away from the Nintendo discussion in the past few months, he was going pretty hard on it earlier on. And he'll still make a decent Nintendo video every now and again. Plus, at one point in time, Nintendo Glazers thought that he was going to be one of the individuals that should have led the boycott against the Switch 2, so by default, he should be in this discussion at least. And that is, of course, Alex from Oh No, It's Alex. Now, this guy's similar to Fratanga in that I watch him because he's really funny, but also because he makes some very good points. Now, granted, the humor and the delivery of his humor is very different than what Fratanga does. Fratanga's like that weird kid in class that is just in his own world making jokes and laughing at his own jokes even if you don't care. Alex is like angry funny, if that makes sense. Actually, he recently mentioned me in a video. He's said nothing but good things about me, so just if you're watching, Alex, know that this is not a hate video. I actually do enjoy your content. Please don't beat me up. He mentioned me in a video recently, and I forgot the point that he made, but I remember it was a good point because I took the clip and I shared it with a group chat that I'm in. And one of the responses I got that cracked me up was, why is Jacked Clooney making a Nintendo video after snorting a line? And I don't know. Jacked Clooney snorting a line and then making a Nintendo video was a weirdly accurate description, I felt. Yeah, snorting a line might be a bit harsh, but maybe he drank 3 or 4 Red Bulls prior to jumping on camera. In any case, while Alex did taper off towards the end of the year, he still has remained consistent in his general hatred towards a lot of the practices going on around the industry. He's consistently been critical against disturbing business practices from the gaming corporations, as well as the mindless consumption from the people that are buying this stuff. And when he streams, he wears a banana suit. And he's been critical enough of Nintendo to be mentioned by Nintendo Glazers as one of the biggest Nintendo grifter channels out there, and as such, I feel that he has earned his spot among us in the Nintendo Grifter of the Year of 2025 nomination list. Now, this last nomination is, in my opinion, the favorite to win this out in the end. He has a larger channel. I've seen his face pop up from time to time online. I never actually was into his videos. But, you know, post-April, prior to the launch of the Switch 2, when everybody was being critical, he did a pretty good job being critical of Nintendo, and that kind of got me watching his stuff a little bit. He's very consistent, he has a very laid-back persona, he could be funny at times, he's not overwhelmingly ridiculous either. He swears that he is not a Nintendo channel, but he is easily, without a doubt, the biggest Nintendo fan there is on YouTube, whether he admits it or not, and it's very obvious when you watch his content. And of course, I am talking about RGT85. Now look, with this nomination, you might be wondering and asking, really, NintenDeen, is this your pick and this is the one that you think is the favorite to be the Grifter of the Year? And if that's how you feel, that alone should tell you just how good this guy is at doing what he does. I won't sugarcoat it. He calls it out like he does. He hates when it's beneficial to hate, and he loves when it's beneficial to love. And he'll look at you and wink in the camera while doing it too. He'll be like, I'm not a Nintendo fan, wink. I'm not a grifter, wink. And I think his viewer base is aware of this too. He's been able to play both sides for years, and people like him because, quite frankly, he's kind of cool, I guess. I don't know, I like hearing him talk about stuff. He's got a good way of delivering things. I wouldn't say he's my favorite content creator, but I mean, sometimes he talks about life stuff and it's cool. He breaks down why he likes games very well. He breaks down why he dislikes certain things a lot. And he seems like the kind of person where I would enjoy kicking back and just hanging out with. And it's pretty clear to me that the ones that enjoy watching his content probably feel the same way, whether or not he's hating on something that they hate or liking something that they love. But oh man, just watch the way he chases the algorithm. And sometimes he even sets the narrative of the algorithm in the Nintendo circles. If there's any discussion at all that's even remotely going viral, remotely being carried by the algorithm, oh, he will be the first one there to talk about it. And sometimes he'll talk about 2 things if there's 2 things going around. He might be the best well put together influencer on this list. And like with Wood from Beat 'em Ups, I can look at him and be like, hey, look, that guy's got some kind of thing going on with his emotions sometimes. He might be having a bad day, he might be having a good day. That might have affected his content. RGT? No, this dude's just like a wall. He's like, oh, that's doing good in the algorithm? Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that now. Is it hating? Okay, yeah, today we're gonna hate. And then if there's something good, oh, now we're gonna love something. I still remember prior to the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, in all his videos talking about how dumb Nintendo was being and all of their stupid business practices. When he found out that some people got a hold of the Nintendo Switch 2 very early, this guy immediately on his first video was like, hey, whoever got their Switch 2 early, I will pay a lot of money to get this things first. Because obviously he wanted to be the first person to have all this content available for the Switch 2. I mean, who wouldn't? But like to blatantly go out on the stream and offer a crap ton of money for this thing, almost without even finishing the first breath where you were being critical of Nintendo. And despite that, nobody bats an eye. They all just kind of accept it. They're like, oh, you know, that's our GT85. That's the way he does things. I tell you, this guy, he's a New Yorker, right? I'm pretty sure he's a New Yorker. Yeah, he's a pro at what he does. You talk about respecting the hustle. There is no hustler out there in the Nintendo circles better than RGT85, because he even has people convinced, supposedly, that he's not a Nintendo channel, when he clearly and undoubtedly is. My dude made a video in 2018 saying why you should buy a Wii U in 2018. If that's not a Nintendo channel, then I don't know what is. But for his ability to stay calm, cool, and collected, know exactly the way to work around the algorithm, to be the master at his trait, and to somehow come up in both the discussions of Nintendo Glazers and Nintendo Grifters throughout the past 6 or 7 months. Without a doubt, the 6th nominee for the Nintendo Grifter of the Year award has to go to nobody other than RGT85. And that's my short list of picks for the nominees of the Grifter of the Year. For those of you that wanted to make the list, I'm sorry you couldn't make it. And for those of you that didn't want to make the list, congratulations, you didn't make the list. I could probably do a list of honorable mentions right now, but I feel like that might be a little excessive. Also, unless you're one of these 6, I don't think you deserve to catch any strays anyway. In any case, I actually have no idea what my game plan is after this. Either this video is going to piss a lot of people off, or it's going to make a lot of people laugh, and then, depending on how that reaction goes, might decide what I do next. I could drop the conversation altogether, or maybe we can put out a poll on my channel and vote to see who makes it to the next round. We will see. But I hope you enjoyed this humorous display of rage bait that I have steered directly into for some reason. Because otherwise, well, what else is this grifter gonna make videos about, am I right? In any case, I will catch you guys on the next one.